It's not April yet. We can't have a tax episode.
Okay. As much as we want.
We can never have a tax episode.
I mean, is there any type of literature that's dedicated to being about taxes?
There's got to be some.
The great James Joyce tax novel. Actually,
I've never heard of that.
Actually, no, it's not James Joyce, but actually, Infinite Jest is set at the IRS.
I mean, but does that really count, though?
Maybe.
It doesn't get more taxes than the Internal Revenue Service.
Well, congratulations. We've been recording for the past, 3 minutes.
Yay.
So, this is episode 57, by the way, because I did look on Podbean. Yeah, last episode was 56 because we couldn't figure out what it was. It's episode 57, and it is March, so it is reading month.
It's also season 3, episode 2 on 3/2/23.
Oh my god, it is!
It is. Yeah.
Ooh!
Yeah. I mean, it won't be coming out on that date, but that's the recording day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's reading month, so to celebrate reading month, we thought we would discuss our favorite kids books that we read as a kid. So not exactly kids books, because when I was a kid, my favorite book was Harry Potter, and I devoured in 3rd grade the entirety of Goblet of Fire. So therefore,
I mean, it is technically a kids book. It was published for children.
You're not,
and you were not the only 3rd grader, I'm sure.
I was not, but I was also that third. I'll explain the story later when we discuss our favorite books.
Yes.
First, I need to know what Tony's reading.
Actually, I'm reading a book called... I'm listening to the audiobook. He Who Fights with Monsters by... The author has a really cool pseudonym. The pseudonym is Shirtaloon. I don't know why, but that's what it is. But the author's actual name is Travis Deverell. And it's what is known as a lit RPG, which is a genre that I'm...
A lit RPG?
Yes, it's a genre I'm being inducted into because, my partner listens to them all the time, and he was just like, you need to try one of these. I want you to read this book.
Explain what a lit RPG is.
I will. So a lit RPG, if you're familiar with RPGs, you know that it's basically, you have this character that you create, and your character goes into this world that's a game, and they are made new by whatever they encounter in the game.
Right.
And their stats and all that kind of stuff. Well, the lit RPG is literally that, but in book form.
Ooh.
So you have a character that's not you, the player, playing the character, but you as the reader are reading the character. And so the character goes into this video game world. And the literal stats are written out into the thing. So your character grows, instead of your character just having a character arc or growing or changing, they still do, but with stats involved. Like the last 3 chapters I just read, the adventurers in the book are talking to Jason, our main character, and they're like, look, if you're going to be an adventurer and hang with us, you need to get this magic thing under control. And so they pour a whole bunch of magic into him just to walk him through because he's leveled up to a point where he's got all this loot. Yeah. And so they're like, oh, yeah. So basically they level him up. That's what they do. You spend 3 chapters with the adventurers leveling him up, but they don't call it that. They don't say, oh, you're leveling up. They just... That's what they're doing. If you're familiar enough with RPGs, you're like, oh yeah. And the literal stats.
They're making him grind.
Yeah, and the literal stats of every single potion that he takes, it's called Essence in this book, but that it's available for him to see before he takes it. But he's still he doesn't understand magic. He doesn't understand the world. So they're having to talk to him oh yeah, you shouldn't take that one yet because if you do that, you're going to end up becoming a vampire. And he's like, cool, vampires are real. And they're like, yes, and we'll kill them because they had to face down a zombie apocalypse because a vampire got loose for too long. And I was like, first of all, that's a really cool way of playing with vampires that I've never thought of. But also, imagine being like puny human you and having a bunch of actual adventurers who survived a zombie war tell you, take that potion and we'll knife you. Like,
I mean, it's like when you're in the middle of Skyrim and you're in Dawnguard and you have that option to become a vampire.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you have to go, well, do I want to become a vampire and get all this extra power, but knowing that if I walk back after I do this to my group that I literally just joined and went, hey, what's up, guys? They're gonna knife me in the back.
It's a great...
Immediately.
Yeah. I originally went into this thinking, oh, I'm either gonna really hate this or it's gonna be kind of mediocre. But my partner has good taste, so I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. If I hate this, I love it. It's actually really, really good. I may have just gotten, a good genre. Yeah, and I may have just gotten a good one. I mean, I'm sure there are bad ones, but like... he handles all of the story stuff really, really well. And it sort of forces you to think like, oh, yeah, that's exactly how I would feel if I went into an RPG. Or like, that's what one who's had our lived experience relatively would experience. It's not like plugging in and playing your favorite game. No, you actually just killed that person. So anyway, that's what I'm reading. I really like it.
Great.
I am reading Everything's Eventual by Stephen King, which is a collection of short stories. Which apparently, I don't know if it's a joke or not, but he kind of... How did he randomly decide the order of stories? And anyways, like he just had a bunch of stories, and he did some random generator thing, and he put on some random order. And
Interesting.
He joked in the introduction. He joked the next one was going to be decided by tarot cards, but I don't know if he.
To be honest, I feel like that'd be a hilarious way to write a book, though.
Neil Gaiman literally wrote an entire short story, which is one of my favorites in his Fragile Things collection. That is literally one of his good friends makes tarot decks, and she handed him a deck, and she's like, "Write me a story." And he did. Like, he'd pull a card, he'd write a part of the story. He'd pull the next card and write, like
how I feel like maybe combine it with the RPG element of the lit RPG thing. So your character, every time you come to a pivotal moment, you pull a tarot card and whatever pops out, if you read the meaning of the card, that's going to determine how well that the whole entire scenario is going to turn out. What happens next. I feel like it'd be funny.
Yes.
And I need to start doing that with my Pathfinder character.
Yes. I think that's... yes. So, how's it going?
Good. The second story in the collection, I think it's called like The Man in the Dark Coat or something like that.
Is that part of his Dark Tower stuff, or is it just...
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
Unless I missed some weird reference. But then again, I've only read the first two Dark Towers, so.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
No. That one's supremely creepy.
Yeah.
There's another one where a guy is getting operated. He's about to have an autopsy done on him, but they don't realize that he's still alive. And so that's uncomfortable to the max.
Yes.
It kind of has a humorous ending, but without spoiling it. But no, it's going good so far.
Okay.
I've never delved into his short stories really before.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you read any of his, other than the two Dark Tower books, have you read any of his other fiction?
Yep. Pet Cemetery.
Okay.
The Stand. Cujo.
Oh, okay. Cool,
yep.
Cool.
And maybe something that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, see, I've only read, I read On Writing because, duh, and it's great. I read the first Dark Tower book, but I was certainly way too young and not experienced enough of a fantasy reader to really, vibe with that, because I was like, this is not okay. What are you doing? Where are these commas coming from? It wasn't my thing. So I need to go back and start that one over again.
Mm-hmm.
But I did read Gingerbread Girl in his collection Just After Sunset, and I immediately knew, I was like, you know what? Harold Bloom was right. He is a much better short story writer than he is a novelist, but they're different forms, so it could just be, It's amazing to me. It's remarkable that he continues to do both at the rate of speed that he continues to do both. That's in and of itself is ridiculous. He's not Neil Gaiman, but
what does that mean?
It means that Neil Gaiman's better than Stephen King.
Okay, and I'll have to read Neil Gaiman.
Although the King fans can fight me over it, but I'm sorry. It's
to be honest, I actually agree with you.
But I've read more Neil Gaiman than I have Stephen King, so that's maybe just I'm not experienced enough or something. Anyway.
I'm fairly unfamiliar with Neil Gaiman. So
ask me for recommendations. I've got...
Give me recommendations, Tony.
I will.
After the show.
Yeah, I will.
I was actually like, please after the podcast when we actually have not...
All right. Yes, sorry.
I was going to say I have the big, huge annotated version of American Gods, which maybe that'd be a good. I don't know if that'd be a good one to start with. But you give me.
I feel like you would appreciate American Gods. I still need to read American Gods.
I haven't gotten in there yet, but I know for a fact that I probably would enjoy it if I had the time.
I've bounced off of it a few times, too many, and I'm like, you know what, one day I'll get there. But you, I think, would appreciate you're an American Gods reader, I can tell.
Okay.
Famously, that is the book that has split his fan base the most.
Really?
Yep. There are huge Neil Gaiman fans who hate it, and there are huge Neil Gaiman fans
just
who
makes me
can't
want to
live
read
without
it.
Yeah, exactly. I knew you. You're an American Gods reader. I could just tell. Aaron,
yes.
What are you reading?
To save myself from graduate school brain rot.
That's my new band. Graduate school brain rot. That's it. As someone who didn't even finish undergraduate.
Well, I mean, graduating in 2 months, so my brain is rotting. So I decided to read a manga that's just kind of basically straight shot, like the crackiest thing you'll ever read in your entire life. I'm just kidding, but it's called Cheeky Brat.
Okay.
And
Cheeky Brat?
Yep.
Okay.
And basically, the best way I can describe it in the smallest amount of words possible, I will go more into depth on what the whole entire thing is. But black cat girl, like that vibe, beats a guy who's very much like that really over attentive dog, where as soon as you push the dog away, the dog is like, nope, hello, how's it going? I'm gonna go right in your face.
So basically you've taken both of my pets and reverse gendered them.
Yes.
And put them in the same story. Got it.
Yes.
Got it.
So the actual plot is Yuki, she's a second year in high school at this point, so I think American-wise, please put that at the equivalent of a junior in high school.
Okay.
Because their first year of high school is our sophomore year of high school. And that's just how they do things.
Well, that says a lot about
and then
our education system,
and
doesn't
then
it?
their middle school goes from, like, I think 7th to 9th grade. Like, if I do the equivalents correctly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So she is a second-year student. She's the manager of the school's basketball team, the guys' basketball team. And the only reason she's the manager of the team is because she has a crush on the guy who's a year older than her. And so she wants to get closer to him, so she became the manager so she could become friends and then eventually, like, confess her feelings. This doesn't go too well when she finds out that he actually has a girlfriend. And so she's like, my entire life is a lie. I hate this.
Oh.
Meanwhile, there's a guy who's a year younger than her, and he's kind of got like a delinquent vibe to him, but he's not really much of a delinquent at all, to be honest. She finds him to be the most annoying person on the face of the planet. And every single time she's like, I need you to leave me alone right now. He's like, what's up? What's up? How's it going? And immediately, like, just like goes in, and you're just like, I hate every single second of this, but I need to keep reading because I know it's going to just work out well in the end. But so far, he's not having too much luck. She's like, I'm going to throw you out the window. Because he's making fun of her for the fact that she joined the basketball team solely to become friends with her upperclassmen and date him, but it's not working out in her favor.
This reminds me of my my only Bleach ship, which is actually Ichigo with, I forget the boy's name. There's a boy in his class who's obsessed with... He's obsessed with their whole friend group, but he's really obsessed with Ichigo. So every time Ichigo enters the room, he's just like loses his entire mind. And I'm like, what the heck? But there's a whole, in the Bounce arc sequence, this kid is attacked by Bounce, and Ichigo is... Yes! Keigo! Yes! So Ichigo comes across...
The one with the brown hair.
Okay.
Yes.
It seems like he's going crazy.
Yeah, so Keigo is headed home.
Well, he's really just been hitting the head in the photo.
I didn't see the bat.
Yeah. So the Bounce are basically bleach vampires, but they attack Keigo, and Keigo is like literally breathing his last breath when Ichigo comes across him, and Ichigo like fights almost to the death. This like it's the most dramatic fight scene, and I was like, if you don't declare your love by the end of this battle sequence, I'm gonna be angry. He doesn't, because I didn't write it. But if I had been writing it,
you knew it would happen.
They would be together, because it, there's that every time Keiko enters a room, she goes like, "Oh, you again." But I'm like, look at that is that a little red in your cheeks? Oh my God.
Red.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's great. It's fantastic. But that's in my universe.
Are you just basically describing the whole entire Merlin fandom with Merlin and Arthur?
Yeah, basically Ichigo is bi in my head, and he just,
he just refuses to admit
He's
it.
distracted by, what's her name?
Orihime?
Because, she's equally obsessed, so he has to balance it out. But I don't know, it's his...
But, like, when we're talking about our favorite books as kids...
Yeah.
What a transition.
Yeah, right. What?
Did you read Bleach as a kid?
No. But I watched it, actually. If we're talking about maybe instead of, like, our favorite books as a kid, I watched Bleach as a kid.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I was the type of kid who literally stayed up. Nighttime, I was supposed to go to bed around, like, 10-ish, which is right when Naruto ended.
Oh, yeah.
But the next show right after that was actually One Piece from 10 until, like, I think maybe 10:30, 10:45 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then right after that, they'd change it to Adult Swim. Oh. And then Adult Swim, the first thing that they would show you is either Inuyasha or Bleach, depending on which day it was.
Oh, yeah, Inuyasha.
And I would watch both religiously.
Of course.
Was this the age of Toonami?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But this is the age of Toonami when it was in the evening, because if you were a younger child, you will remember that Toonami actually just used to be after school. And Toonami used to have Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z. Depending on which year you were watching it, there was Tokyo Mew Mew on there. There was like a whole Digimon was on there. There was a whole different slew of animes on there.
It was different, yeah.
And then they turned around, and once they started going into Naruto and things like that, they would then turn around and they moved it to the evening, so that way they realized that it was like TV 13 at that point, and they needed to move it back. I still watch it because there's a website that you can watch Toonami.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
They live stream like Toonami like the whole entire day. I will send you a link.
Okay, thank you.
But does anybody have any favorite books that they read as a kid?
I made a list.
You made. I noticed you made a list. I walked in and the first thing I said was, "Oh no, they made a list."
And I was like, I'm not the only one.
It's called Toonami Aftermath. You're welcome.
Toonami Aftermath.
That's cool. Okay. Yeah, no, I made a list of them because I remember them all, and I have them all on a shelf, with the exception of 2 of the series. Because
why?
Well, okay, so
what is it?
I read Encyclopedia Brown and Amelia Bedelia, like all of those books, because they were my first exposure to library books. Technically, the Dr. Seuss books work. So growing up, I had Green Eggs and Ham and The Cat in the Hat in the house. And I remember looking at the pictures, wondering what they meant and this was before first grade. I just remember suddenly the letters made sense.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
Then I started reading the stories, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are really fun. And I just read them over and over and over again. And my mom took us to the library to get our library cards, and I sat and read Dr. Seuss books while my cousin threw blocks at my head because she was confused as to why I would read at the library instead of play with blocks.
Because there are books at the library. Duh.
Yes, she's a lovely person now, but she was a violent child. And then I read, like right after that, I got to Encyclopedia Brown and Amelia Bedelia because they were my beginning readers because I refused to read Dick and Jane. I actually said no to Dick and Jane because I thought they were stupid.
I actually never read Dick and Jane.
We were handed Dick and Jane at school to read, but I refused to read them because I wanted something that was smart. So I've read Encyclopedia Brown and Amelia Bedelia. What you have to know if you do not read them is that they are easily the worst books in the world. Because they're the same thing over and over again. Like Encyclopedia, there are 25 Encyclopedia Brown books. And every single one of them, there's about, 4 or 5 short stories. And they're all mysteries. Every single mystery in the book is the same mystery. But in this one, Encyclopedia Brown is finding the bully's shoe instead of the bully's hair clip. Like, it's all the same. Like, sometimes down to the scene where they're sitting at the dinner table and he's orating to Dad. Like, you know how, like, in Hercule Poirot mysteries, like, the common thing is for him to gather all of the people he's been questioning the whole mystery together in a room. And
so he can then reveal who it is in front of everyone?
Yes, exactly. And that works geniusly in Hercule Poirot.
Right.
In Encyclopedia Brown, where it's at the dinner table with my dad, who's a cop, I'm going to tell him how I found Suzanne's hair clip. Stupid. But I loved them so much. They were just, I don't know.
See, I remember Amelia Bedelia, but I never read Encyclopedia Brown.
You didn't miss anything.
No, like pretty much when I was a kid, I grew up reading Amelia Bedelia, obviously.
Yeah, I loved it.
And then for me, it was either Franklin.
Oh, I forgot about Franklin. Yeah, I read those too.
Books. I read the Franklin books.
The show was better.
Yeah. No, because I religiously watched the show too. So good. And then the Berenstain Bears.
Oh my God! Yes.
And then,
yes.
I forgot what they're called. It's like they're like the little brown monster characters, and I don't remember what they're
Little
called.
Critter?
Yeah,
Little Critter. I love those too.
I read that.
Yeah, never heard of that.
Marcia Mayer.
Then all of that then ended up going into Junie B. Jones.
Oh,
I was obsessed with Junie B. Jones.
I miss Junie.
I used to have every single Junie B. Jones book.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get into Magic Treehouse. Could not get into Magic Treehouse. But I tried. Instead, I got into Judy Moody, and then that ended up going into... I also tried to get into Beverly Clearly. Could not do it.
Oh, I forgot about her. I read all of those books.
Could not get... I read them. I just couldn't get into them.
Ramona, I read every single...
However, I was obsessed with Judy Moody. And then I was also obsessed with... I don't know if we actually have any upstairs, but the Guardians of the Ga'Hoole series.
Oh, yeah.
That was my series up until when Warrior Cats came out, and then I was obsessed with Warrior Cats.
Oh.
I was on the playground playing Warrior Cats in middle school. And then we started watching Naruto, and that all changed because then we were Naruto running all around the playground instead. But if I remember correctly, a lot of my reading capabilities, quite literally, my parents had a copy of the game Hooked on Phonics. And so I played Hooked on Phonics religiously as a child. And my mom or dad would sit there and let me play Hooked on Phonics religiously at the same time that my brothers would sit me in their lap and play like Final Fantasy, even though I'm 3, in front of them. And so I learned how to read from watching Final Fantasy and Hooked on Phonics.
I mean...
It's a cool origin story.
That is my villain origin story. Grant, do you have any favorite children's books?
Okay. I feel like in the earliest days of like picture books and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
There was there's kids screaming in the background. How fitting.
Me too.
How fitting for
this is a
for an episode
library.
about
We're
childhood.
loud.
Yeah.
Congrats. Welcome.
My childhood is filled with screaming too. It's like it all works out. So, so a few that come to mind are I can't remember. We had a long discussion about him on the picture. Didn't we have a picture book episode?
We did have a picture book episode. I edited that episode too.
Frog and Toad and that series.
Yeah.
Especially Owl at Home. I really enjoyed
Arnold Lobel.
Arnold Lobel, and then when I got like slightly moving up into not quite chapter books or whatever, I really enjoyed the Geronimo Stilton series.
Oh, nice.
Those are always fun.
Yeah.
Goosebumps.
I was always too scared to read Goosebumps.
I read Goosebumps so much.
Yeah, I saw a Goosebumps commercial.
Did you guys
when it was first coming out, and I was like, I'm not reading those.
Did you guys read the ones? And I'm just saying this like in general. Did you guys read the ones that had an actual character as the main character, like where it was all in third person?
I read both.
Or did you read the one where it was your choose your own adventure book? Because that's the only ones that I read as a kid, and those scared the everything else.
Remember the like Mr. Bones ride or whatever, like the skeleton.
No, I
park?
hated the camp one. There was one where you went to summer camp and you basically had
I heard about that.
You had like a Jason like character chasing after you at one point.
Yeah.
And like depending on your actions, you just basically like died in the middle of the camp. It was terrifying.
That's genius.
No. R.L. Stine has a way with, I don't know how, writing accessible, yet still kind of creepy stories for kids.
Yeah.
I would like to suggest a couple different books because I had to BuzzFeed a few of them so I would remember what they were. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible,
No Good, Very Bad Day.
Yeah.
I loved that book. Yeah.
That one. No, David.
I never read that one.
I read that one.
I thought that was a newer.
No, it's a trilogy, by the way, because there's three of them. Yeah. Meanwhile, he also read another, David Shannon, who's the writer of No David. He wrote another one, which I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's A Bad Case of Stripes.
Oh, we have that one. I have not read that one.
I enjoyed that one. I thought it was really good.
I like his duck on a human vehicle series. So duck on a bike, duck on a tractor.
Also Click Clack Moo, Cows That Type.
I love that.
That is a classic.
I never read it as a kid, but I love that book so much.
Also, one that I remember, and this isn't until I actually looked at the book cover and my brain automatically had one of those like, you read this book moment. 5 Little Monkeys Jumping on the Bed. There's a book. It's Eileen Crystallo.
Okay.
I remember reading that one, and it wasn't until I looked at the cover that I remembered that it existed.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I have vague memories of it.
I have an actual funny story related to Frog and Toad. So that's the funny thing about, not the funny thing, the thing about my list is not only do I have a list of the books, but I have a story associated with all of them, which is why they live in my memory. So Frog and Toad were books that my brother checked out from the library with his library card.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I should ask him, and he may not remember, but he, always had a Frog and Toad book. And I always was just over there was my Encyclopedia Brown Amelia Bedelia. I'm not reading about frogs and toads. Which doesn't make sense, because I read my way through Dr. Seuss. So if you can read about, Sneetches, what's the big deal about frog? But I was a snob. So I was like, I'm not reading those. But there was a day when my mom, she would do this, especially on Sundays, because she needed to, spend hours on the phone talking to not bill collectors, but bill people. For some reason, I thought you were gonna say somebody's actual name, like Bill Cullen. I'm like, who is Bill Cullen? Is this gonna be all?
They were on the phone with Bill Nye.
She would spend whole Sundays just doing all the financial stuff and all that kind of stuff. That as grown up now, I'm like, oh, I see what you're doing. But at the time, I was just like, oh God, Mom's on the phone and she's angry again. Okay.
Something else.
So the rule of the house was if Mom is on the phone before breakfast and she's angry and it's a Sunday, that means you're spending the whole day in the room with the door closed, and you better not make too much noise. And the best way to not make too much noise was to read. My brother hated reading. So I wanted to read, but he would not let me read if he didn't feel like reading. So I was like, well, you have to. And he's like, the only way I'm going to read is if you read, this book with me, to me, whatever. And I was like, I don't want to read those. And he's like, well, then I guess I'm going to know. Well, I don't know. I don't remember it. But the point is, I ended up reading Frog and Toad to him. And I loved them. Once I was reading them to him, I was like, oh my God, these are so great. I don't even remember necessarily what I thought, except that I liked them. And now, I read one story yesterday just to see if I could read it for a story time. They don't make great story time books, by the way. But I sat there and almost sobbed from the one story, because the story isn't just, it's called Spring, and it's about Frog goes over to Toad's house to wake him up for spring, and Toad doesn't want to wake up.
Toad just wants to sleep.
Toad wants to stay hibernating. I understand.
See, this is why I always identify with Toad.
Yeah, of course. As a kid, I was just kind of like, it was a great story. Entertaining, did all the right things. As an adult, I'm like, oh my God, he's writing about depression. Because he is. And it's just like, wow, how in the world could you make that? I mean, like, that's, to me, that's a stroke of genius. I mean, that it's amazing. But also, the coolest thing about Frog and Toad for me is that the best library overdue notice that I've ever gotten in my life, and it wasn't me, it was my brother, because at that age I didn't know that such a thing existed.
Yeah.
But what makes it even better is that we got the notice in the mail a year and a half after the book was overdue.
So just racking up those.
Yeah, so they randomly sent us this letter in the mail saying, this book is overdue. They had a date saying when it should be due back and a date saying when it should have been due back. And I remember looking at that, and my mom was so angry at my brother, but she didn't bring up the fact that it was due a year and a half before that. And I was like, how is she not noticing this? Like, I was like, am I the only one? I was like, it was due last year. Like, why are we going to return it now? And she was like, oh, we're going to return it. We somehow found this book. I don't know how. But
it's the mom powers that come with being a mom.
Yeah, we all three of us were digging around the house for this book. We found the book, we pile in the car, and we go down the street to the library and return the book. And the lady at the library was really super nice and thankful or whatever, but kind of blasé about it, almost a big deal. But the entire time we were headed there, my mom was fussing about the fact that, do you know that people can arrest you for putting and I was just mortified and yet cackling because I had all these images in my head of my brother's going to go to jail for a Frog and Toad book.
And now you work at a library and you understand about the librarian was just so blasé. You
Exactly.
Just oh well.
Yeah, I'm like, oh wow, I became that librarian. Okay, well that works.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
If you guys could read any one of the books that you really enjoyed as a kid, again, forget everything you ever know about it, but you can read it again, which one would you read?
Only one?
I might give you a leeway and let you pick a couple. For me, I think it would probably be the Madeline series.
Oh, I never read those.
What age group are we talking?
It could be any,
okay,
as long as you were a kid. Probably before the age of 13, preferably, but however you feel. But when I was a kid, I read. I was obsessed with her. By the way, Madeline. And for those who don't know, she's. I think they live in an orphanage convent type deal.
In France, right?
In France, and there's 12 little girls, and they're in 2 straight lines, and the one at the very end, that's little Madeline. Mm-hmm. She's got red short hair, and she wears yellow. And there's a big giant book that's a compendium of a lot of the different short stories.
Oh yeah.
And so I had the yellow book, and I read the yellow book religiously. And then they came out with a movie, an animated film.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember
and
that. That was a big deal.
Obsessed. But also because, she's a little girl and she had red hair. And I was like, I have red hair, Mom. I like this too. I want to wear yellow. And so, if I could read another one, it'd probably be that. Also, I would like to get my whole entire heart broken all over again by reading the original Warrior Cat series because...
This is a hard question because I own every book on this list.
Yeah.
And...
That's the point of the question.
I know, and I'm just I
Can I pause it?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you some time.
Yeah.
There's a few series, but that I could choose from. But I think.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go down your list.
So, similar to Goosebumps, American/Michigan Chillers.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Jonathan Rand.
I imagine it would be very consistent now. In quality, I don't know. I don't know how good they would be.
It's surprising to go back and read some.
But
it's very interesting to just go back and read your childhood favorites, to be honest.
No, I blew through the Michigan Chillers though as a kid because I was like, hey, I live here.
Yeah, right. Yes, exactly.
That's why everyone in my school read those books, and I was just like,
the series of unfortunate events would probably hold up the best as actual books.
Sure.
Of the series I read as a kid. Also, maybe the Bionicle series, although that has so many books.
Oh my God.
You read the Bionicles?
I didn't read all of them, but
there were like 200 of them or something.
No, there's tons and tons of them because there's. Okay.
I forgot that there were books, but I just remember having the toys.
No, the toys are awesome, but the lore. The other day, I found a video. It's literally 9 hours long.
Did you find a video essay about lore?
It covers the entire Bionicle lore from beginning to end. It's a whole thing, and that's what introduced me to world building.
Yeah.
So those are probably my three.
Okay.
I didn't realize there was so much Bionicle lore. I feel like I have to revisit.
I remember.
In fact,
there was the TV show.
There wasn't a TV show. There's four animated movies.
Oh right,
There were a lot of animated commercials as well.
Yeah, I remember those Bionicle commercials. I never got a Bionicle, but I remember.
And by the way, the second Bionicle movie pulls off like a good leader turning out to be evil far better than episode 3 does. So
interesting.
As a direct to DVD movie based on a toy line.
Interesting.
There's more dread. Me, but
no, that's.
I guess that was a movie
really
series.
impressive.
I remember there being a TV show.
I don't think there was, but they were in talks of doing a TV show at like multiple points, but it never happened.
Then what did I watch? What do I remember
you probably
watching?
watched the commercials.
No, because it was a full hour, like a half-hour long episode.
There was the Montanui online game, which is animated, and it's like a point-and-click adventure. But I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what.
I don't remember what it is, but okay.
Anyways,
what book would I? Okay, so having given this some thought, I still don't know what it would be because here. So I read a book called Carry On, Mr. Bowditch.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, yes. We also have it here. I'm trying to remember who wrote this book. I should have written it down, but I can look it up. Oh, yes. Jean Lee Latham.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a book about Nathaniel. Jesus. Nathaniel Bowditch, who is often referred to as the father of navigation, because as a kid, when I read it, I didn't realize that Nathaniel Bowditch was a real person. And that I was reading basically, because, they used to have these a lot. They don't have them as much anymore. Or they do them now, but they're picture books. Mm-hmm. Whereas back then they did like full-on chapter books, which are basically biographical novels.
Like kind of like the Dear America series.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly like those. So I read this book only because this woman named Earlene Jackson, she was from Detroit. She went to my church. And she was one of those people that if you when you're a kid and you meet somebody like that, you will never forget that person, regardless of what they end up becoming later in life or meaning to you later. Because I never met a woman who wore African garb everywhere. She lit it from head to toe. And she was from Detroit. She was not from Africa. She was not from an island. She was from Detroit.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, she was the first person that I met who, every time she came to church, she head to toe in some kind of, she looked like she was coming to America every weekend. And it was amazing because it was just and she was very forthright and very, she was that, just one of those people. And she said I think the other thing, though, is that she took kids seriously, which was a big deal to me as a kid because adults didn't do that. Right. She would speak literally directly to you.
Gave them handshakes?
Yeah, no. I mean, if she would either give you a handshake or she would, upbraid other adults who were like, don't give that child a hug. That child told you no. Didn't you? I mean, she was just...
She's like, let's respect the children's boundaries.
Yeah. She was so cool in that way. So she said to me once, she was like, I noticed you keep reading those same books over and over again. I don't remember which ones they were. They were probably Encyclopedia Brown.
It was probably Amelia Bedelia.
Yeah. And she was like, when are you going to read something that you can actually read? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, you're smart. I know you are. How about you read something that's challenging? So she hands me Carry On, Mr. Bowditch, and she's like, I bet you won't read it.
Well, that's a challenge that I have to.
And it was Really? It took me a month.
Yeah.
Of Sundays, but it took me a month, and it was the first encounter with a book where like the first 100 pages of the book bored me to tears. Now this is a 251-page book.
That's me with any Dear America book.
But like the first 100 pages bored me to tears, and I was like, but I have to finish this book. I have to finish this book, and it really pays off because it's just the story of this very small boy who's an orphan in not pre-colonial, but like just colonial America.
This is Nathaniel Bowditch, the oceanographer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and you follow him as he joins this, sea crew. It's basically Treasure Island, except the kid is cool because he learns math.
Right.
And he uses math to like do things like get them out of a storm.
See, that would have pushed me off right away.
But you would think so. You would think so, except it was so compelling that I wished just while I was reading that book that I was that good at something. Like I was like, oh, I want to be so good at a skill that I can get grown-ups out of trouble. Like that. It's that like
yeah.
It was amazing to experience that. And it lived like, I only read that book once and because I had to give it back to her, never owned it until a few years ago. And I remember when I was 19, I went to Boston for this, or, that whole area for a class trip or whatever for 3 weeks. And we were in Salem. And the whole time we were in Salem, that whole day, I was like, there's this book and I forget what it's called. I could see the cover, but I could not remember the name of the book. I could not remember the name. So then we went to the House of the Seven Gables. Oh. And they took us around the House of the Seven Gables. It was nice, whatever. Then we went to this gift shop. And right in the front of the gift shop, there was a huge display of Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. And I remember turning, like I had this like weird like spidey sense thing happen on the back of my neck.
Going like, hey,
and I turned around and saw the display and literally almost physically passed out. And I know this because the chaperone, the mom that I was getting along with the whole time, her son was cute. So I was like, I will definitely talk to you. And they had money. That's terrible, but it's true.
Shout out to them.
But she was like, are you okay? Are you okay? Do you need food or something? And I was like, no. But remember earlier when I was telling you, I couldn't remember the name of that book. And she's like, I was like, it's right there. She's like, that's the book. And it was the most amazing experience. I think she bought me the book or I bought the book. I can't remember. It was $7.99.
I almost passed out on a school trip too, but that's because I cut my thumb open with a fake knife.
That's a complete change of topic.
Yikes. That's no fun. So yes, to say, long story short, one day I will pick Carry On, Mr. Bowditch off my shelf at home and read it again, but I haven't, and I don't know.
Does anybody remember those? Did anybody else, except, I don't know if you had to do it because your school might have been a bit different, the reader tests?
Like the AR reader tests?
Yeah.
No, I never did them. I'm familiar with them because I taught kids who did them, but...
I feel like I did, but I can't remember.
Here's the thing. I remember doing those as a kid and having to read them specifically. I tried reading the Dear America series for it, and I absolutely hated reading the Dear America series, so I put it down. Yeah. Instead, I read like 5 nonfiction books instead.
Nice.
Instead, though, because I just remember, because we're talking about like our favorite series as a kid, a lot of my books were used in that format to try to be able to bolster that. Yeah. Up until the point where I got to like 3rd grade, I read the whole entire one. I think it was Chamber of Secrets. I read the whole thing, which constitutes, by the way, is 20 AR points. Here's the thing. We only had to do 12. And so everybody else was like reading like their little tiny, like, like the Nat Geo, like nonfiction books about specific places or things or like stuff like that, because that's what they were reading, or the little tiny chapter books. Mm-hmm. And they were only getting like maybe like 3 or 4, 1 or 2, 3 or 4 points depending on what they were reading. Mm. So I read Harry Potter, Chamber of Secrets, and then I turned around and I took the test at the beginning of the year. And my teacher looked at my mom and said, she can't do that. And my mom was like, so, how many points does she need? 12. Well, she got 12 points, right? Right. Then she can read whatever she wants for the rest of the year.
I love that. Yeah.
But that was my children's book.
I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, this was a very straightforward episode.
It's true. I'm trying to think what... there was a question off the top of my head and I don't remember.
Well, I was going to ask if you guys had to recommend one of your favorite childhood books, which one would you recommend to a child?
I have frequently recommended the Chronicles of Narnia, and there is a kid who is reading her way through the Chronicles of Narnia, which is really nice.
On your recommendation?
I think that she was heading in that direction anyway because they read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or were reading The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe at school, and I think her mom was like, "Do you know that? Like that's like Tony's favorite books, right?" And this girl wants to be a writer and a librarian, so.
Love her even more.
So it was like, she was like, "Oh, have to read those." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad." And they're worth recommending. They're so good. I mean, I still read them to this day. At least one of them every year. Sometimes I read 2 or 3 a year. It just depends on the year.
Great. Recommend a child's book.
I feel like The Giver is a pretty good bet for anybody.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, and even today, like, if they have experience with like Hunger Games or anything, and they, the dystopian genre is more, it's bigger now. They could use that as a, way in. Plus, it's just a good book.
It's a fantastic book. I recommend everyone who's read The Hunger Games to cleanse their palates by reading a much better book, which is The Giver.
I haven't read any of the sequels, but
I've never actually read The Giver in my entire life.
Good. It's so good.
I think that's one of the books that when I was in 3rd grade they made us like pick a book to read.
Oh yeah.
And they like gave us a list and that was on the list and majority of my classmates picked that. I did not. I chose Because of Winn-Dixie.
Oh, that's a great book.
I chose that one instead.
Yeah.
But then I also picked, I think it was, to be honest, I don't remember if it was Because of Winn-Dixie, but the other option I believe I picked was either that or Shiloh.
I remember.
And that's because we got to watch the movies in class and my best friend and I were absolutely obsessed. And we hated the evil character with every fiber of our being because we were obsessed with Shiloh the dog.
I remember reading Where the Red Fern Grows for school. And then we watched the movie.
Oh.
Then, like, tons of people were crying.
We watched Tuck Everlasting.
Oh, yeah.
That
we
is
did. We watched that as well. Yeah.
4th grade.
That's a good book, though.
4th grade. We didn't have to read the book. We just got to watch the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched it, and I was so upset because, like, as your little hopeless romantic 4th grader is sitting there just going, I want them to be together. And then you get to the end and you're like,
Wait.
I hate everything.
Wait, which one are we talking about?
Tuck Everlasting.
Oh, I'm thinking of Freak the Mighty.
No.
Because we watched that movie in school, and that was yeah. He knew he was going to die.
Why are teachers mean?
I don't know.
Like, why do they show you stuff like that?
I think I remember watching Freak the Mighty too, but I think we also had to read it.
We read both. We read and watched the movie as well.
Yeah, teachers just kind of did that to us. It's where the collective trauma comes from.
So the one book that I feel like this will be the last book that I read in my life. If I get the chance to know that I am dying, I will
make that the last book.
Yes, because not the book we were just talking about, but there's a book called Johnny Tremaine.
Okay.
That it was assigned for us to read in middle school. Mm-hmm. I think I was in 7th grade, and I strangely, I was a middle schooler with much moxie. I said to my teacher, I said, "You do realize that you have just recommended me something that I'm never going to read. I will fake the homework." And he says, "And I will flunk you." And I was like, "Oh yeah, only if I get caught." And he goes, "I strongly suggest that you read this book because I really do think you will like it." And that was all he needed to say. Because if he had said, kept going down the track of like, "Oh, I will best you by failing you because mm-hmm. Then I'm like, I would have just not read the book and then attempted to cheat my way through the project. Mm-hmm. But when he said, "I think you would actually like it," I knew he was talking to me as a reader. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. I sobbed. There's a scene. It's a silversmithing accident. And that is all I'm going to say.
I
feel like... Go ahead.
Well, I'll say what I feel like, and then you will say... I felt like you mentioned this before in the podcast.
I probably have. It is the most...
Because the smelting accident sounds...
No, it does. I was going to say, it reminds me of the time that I almost started crying in the middle of reading The Outsiders in the middle of class. Because I reached the whole entire Dally plot point, if anybody's ever read the books.
Honestly, the Giver or The Outsiders would be a good... So,
spoiler alert. There's a section... So, the section that I'm talking about is one of the main... There's multiple main characters, but there's 3 main characters that the whole entire thing really follows. So, it follows Ponyboy, obviously. He and his friend Johnny run away with the help of Dally. Because there's kind of like a East Side, West Side type thing going on at this moment. And it's the poor kids versus the rich kids, as you do when you want to do a classist, example.
Yeah, right.
And so they get jumped by the rich kids, and they accidentally kill one of them in self-defense. But these guys are 14, 15, and they have absolutely, no idea for the fact that they're probably going to get off on it. Or, they have, no idea. So they're just like, oh, my God, we just killed somebody. We need to leave right now. So they run away. They're in an abandoned church for a hot bit. And they leave.
I'm sure that goes perfectly well.
Yeah. And one of the characters comes and Dally comes and, gets them. And they end up... coming back to the church, and the church is on fire because they left cigarettes in the middle of the church.
Like you do.
Yeah. And so it ends up with some not nice things happening to one of the characters. That character ends up dying, and Dally, in a fit of whole entire rage because he's just found out that his favorite person has just died, goes and steals from one of the local stores and then runs off as they're calling the cops, and uses the cops as a way to just end everything at that point. And if you watch the movie, it's kind of sad, but in the book, it's really heart-wrenching because you're just like, oh my God, this is the point of view of a 14-year-old watching this happen, and you're like, oh no.
It's bonkers.
Things escalated quickly.
Things escalated really quickly. I want to end this on a nicer note, though, so I want to know what Tony pulled out of the jar.
Yeah. Sorry.
Tony's staring at the paper like, yeah, sure, I'll tell you.
It's been a long day. Twizzlers or Red Vines? Why?
Oh, that's...
Somebody's going to have to explain the difference to me.
Twizzlers are better.
Twizzlers taste better. I can get the whole entire dynamic for this question, though.
Is Red Vine the one that comes apart in the little strings?
Or they both do.
They do?
Yeah.
Yes, but I think red vines are designed to be easier.
Red vines are a little bit more off-brandy. The whole entire joke is that it's a Star Kid joke.
Oh my God.
Because there's a whole...
Yeah.
I don't know if they went off like that, but...
Red vines.
Red vines.
Yeah. Also, you're more of a red vine.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think I like the taste.
I like Twizzlers just a little bit more because they're sweeter.
The taste reminds me of Swedish Fish, maybe, or maybe I'm just misremembering this. But
they do taste like Swedish.
But you know what beats all of this
Swedish
is
Fish.
The Twizzlers with the fruit filling. Fruit.
Yes.
Agreed.
Oh, that just solos the whole entire thing. I was about to say man, they do taste like Swedish Fish. So. That's why I don't like either of them.
I love Swedish Fish.
I love those.
When Star Kid basically was really popular and they did the Harry Potter musical, essentially there was a whole entire joke about red vines in there, and so everybody... Oh,
there was? Yes, there's a red vine.
So everybody who ever watched like that was obsessed with red vines for a hot minute, and then I tried to be just as obsessed with it so we could make the joke constantly in the middle of high school. And we would literally carry around a whole entire sack of red vines. But as I grew older, I realized I just didn't like the taste of them. And so I just carried around Twizzlers instead.
Red vines taste like that glass of wine that you wish you hadn't ordered. But you already ordered it and you started to tap and it's too late.
I guess I'm alone.
Maybe we should put some of those characters in the next episode.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to next week's episode.
The listeners have absolutely no idea.
Our listeners who are also readers. Yeah.
I think they're going to like next episode the most.
Throw Captain Ahab in there. Yeah.
Oh, now I have to type that out now too. Listen, you already had me add. Who did you have me add today?
Tim Allen from Home Improvement.
Oh my.
No, listen. And this is just a little like
teaser.
Listen.